Commander Elias Riker stepped out of the small transport ship onto the soft, violet soil of Zyphera. The sky above was not blue, as on Earth, but a shifting tapestry of pink and gold, like sunlight passing through colored glass. The air smelled faintly of flowers, yet carried a metallic tang. He took a deep breath, letting the unfamiliar sense fill him with both awe and curiosity. The Zypheri awaited him. They were taller than humans, slender, with shimmering skin that reflected light like a polished stone. Their eyes, large and iridescent, seemed to observe every detail with patient intelligence. Elias had expected to feel nervous, but the moment he saw them, a calm focus replaced any fear. He had been trained for first contact, but no training could prepare someone for the quiet majesty of an entire alien civilization greeting them. A figure approached him ahead of the others. She moved with grace and authority, yet there was something soft in her presence that made her approachable. This was Princess Leora. Her gaze met Elias's, and in that moment he felt a subtle connection, as if they were two notes in a song that had yet to be composed. "Welcome, human," she said, her voice melodic, carrying warmth beneath its formality. "I am Leora." Elias bowed slightly, a gesture he hoped she would understand. "I am Elias Riker, commander of this human envoy. I come in peace and with curiosity to learn." She studied him for a moment, her eyes reflecting interest rather than suspicion. "Peace is welcome here," she said. "Curiosity, that is rarer." He allowed himself a small smile. "Humans value curiosity highly. It often leads us to unexpected discoveries." The Zypheri elders exchanged glances. They spoke among themselves in a low, musical language that Elias could not understand, but the tone suggested deliberation rather than threat. Leora gestured for him to follow her. They walked across a path of smooth, reflective stones, leading to a large structure that resembled a crystal garden. Inside, the walls pulsed with faint light, illuminating what seemed to be machines and devices of strange design. "This is our hall of knowledge," Leora explained. "Many of our devices are ancient. We understand them in part, but some remain mysteries. Perhaps your human ways can shed new light." Elias' curiosity piqued. "I would be honored to try." She guided him to a device that hummed softly, a web of translucent panels and glowing nodes. The Zypheri had been attempting to repair it for decades, but its mechanisms were stubborn, resisting every attempt. Humans, he knew, often approached problems differently, with intuition and improvisation rather than rigid logic. He knelt beside the device, examining the connections. Leora watched quietly as he worked. His hands moved with careful precision, adjusting wires, testing circuits, and whispering small observations. Slowly, the device responded, lights brightening and the hum becoming steady. The machine came alive, pulsing rhythmically like a heartbeat. The elders gasped softly, their voices rising in a chorus of admiration. Elias looked up at Leora and she smiled, a small, private smile that conveyed surprise and approval. "You humans, you have a way of seeing the world differently," Leora said. "This is remarkable." "It's not just humans," Elias replied. "I think it's about patience, observation, and sometimes letting intuition guide you." She tilted her head, curiosity deepening in her gaze. "Patience is a lesson we Zypheri have long practiced. Intuition, perhaps less so." Elias chuckled softly. "Then perhaps we can learn from each other." For a moment, silence stretched between them. The device continued its steady pulse, a small victory that seemed to echo in the room. Then Elias leaned slightly closer and whispered something in her language, a phrase he had learned during careful study before arrival. It was simple, yet full of meaning. "Together, we can understand more." Leora's eyes widened slightly. She did not speak immediately. Instead, she allowed the words to settle, as if tasting them slowly. Then she smiled, the kind of smile that softened rigid boundaries and hinted at possibilities previously unimagined. That smile, small as it was, seemed to change the entire atmosphere of the hall. Elias straightened, noticing the elders watching with renewed attention. Leora's gesture invited them to consider the human not as a stranger, but as a potential partner. The walls, which had seemed cold and formal, now felt warmer, alive with possibility. Over the following days, Elias explored Zyphra with Leora at his side. They walked through gardens where plants emitted gentle light, rivers that shimmered with liquid colors unlike any on Earth, and libraries that contained both physical and holographic records. Everywhere he went, Elias observed, asked questions, and listened. Zyphri were not slow to notice his interest and respect. In the evenings, Leora would show him ancient Zyphri scripts, explaining their history and philosophy. Elias shared stories of Earth, of humanity's triumphs and failures, of our curiosity and creativity. He spoke of music, art, and the small joys of daily life. Zyphri found his stories strange yet fascinating, and Leora's eyes sparkled with engagement. One day they came upon a grove where the light seemed almost tangible, drifting like silk threads through the air. Elias paused, looking at a small creature that darted through the branches, its body glowing softly. Leora observed him carefully. "Humans are adaptable," she said quietly. "You do not fear the unfamiliar, you embrace it." Elias smiled. "We fear, certainly, but curiosity often outweighs fear, and sometimes fear can teach you more than safety ever could." She considered his words and then almost imperceptibly nodded. "Then perhaps fear need not limit understanding. Perhaps we can learn together." As the days passed, their partnership deepened. Elias respected Zyphri culture and traditions, careful never to offend, always observing before acting. Leora, in turn, allowed herself to question some long-held assumptions, inspired by his approach. Together, they discovered solutions to problems that had perplexed her people for decades. During a quiet moment in the Crystal Garden, Elias whispered again, a phrase of encouragement and trust. Leora responded with that same radiant smile, a smile that said more than words ever could. It was a smile that promised change, not through force or demand, but through understanding, respect, and collaboration. By the end of the first part of their encounter, the seeds of transformation had been planted. The elders looked upon the human envoy not just with curiosity, but with cautious optimism. Leora, once bound by tradition, felt a stirring of hope and excitement. Elias, aware of the impact of his words and actions, felt a growing sense of responsibility, not to dominate, but to guide gently, showing what humans could offer through cooperation and empathy. As Elias prepared to rest that night, he gazed out at Zyphra's twin moons, reflecting silver and rose across the violet plains. He knew the journey ahead would be challenging, not in the sense of danger, but in the delicate art of bridging worlds. And yet he felt certain that with patience, respect, and the simple power of human ingenuity, much could be achieved. Leora's final words for the day lingered in his mind. "Your presence has changed something here, human. I do not yet know the full measure, but I feel it. Perhaps the stars are closer than we thought." And as Elias closed his eyes, he imagined what might come next, not only for humans on Zyphra, but for the future of two worlds learning to understand each other, one whisper at a time. Days passed on Zyphra, and with each sunrise, Elias felt a deeper connection to the planet and its people. The twin suns bathed the violet landscape in colors that seemed almost unreal, yet they did not intimidate him. Instead, they inspired a quiet determination to show the Zyphri what humans could offer, not through force, but through patience, creativity, and understanding. Elias began each day with Leora by his side, exploring Zyphra's vast wonders. They walked through gardens where the flowers moved like waves in a gentle current, reacting to the air and light. Rivers shimmered in colors Elias had never seen, reflecting the twin suns and the luminescent flora. Leora explained that these plants and waters had been studied for centuries, but their full potential remained a mystery. "You see, human," Leora said one morning, "our world is filled with beauty, but we often overlook it. We are taught to follow rules, to respect structure. Curiosity must be disciplined." Elias smiled. "On Earth, curiosity is also valued, though in a different way. Sometimes the most important discoveries come from following an idea, even when it seems unusual." Leora raised an eyebrow. "Unusual ideas are dangerous here. They disrupt order." "Perhaps," Elias said gently, "but sometimes disruption can lead to growth. Only if it is guided carefully." She considered his words as they approached a series of ancient structures, gleaming faintly in the sunlight. The Sci-Fi had long tried to activate the devices inside, but none had succeeded. Elias knelt before one of the mechanisms, his fingers tracing patterns and studying the designs. Leora watched silently, noticing the care and patience he applied. "May I try?" she asked finally, kneeling beside him. "Of course," Elias replied. "Work with me, not against me." Together they experimented. Elias suggested subtle adjustments, and Leora added her deep knowledge of Sci-Fi energy patterns. Slowly, the device responded, lights flickering, then stabilizing in a steady rhythm. A soft hum filled the structure as if the mechanism were breathing. Leora's eyes widened. "It works together." Elias nodded. "Two minds, two perspectives. That is often enough to solve what one alone cannot." From that moment, their partnership became more than a simple collaboration. It was a blending of ways of thinking, human intuition and empathy combined with Sci-Fi precision and logic. The elders observed their efforts with quiet astonishment, some whispering to each other in the melodic Sci-Fi tongue, amazed that such a bond could form so quickly. Over time, Elias and Leora began to share more personal stories. Elias spoke of Earth, its oceans, mountains, cities, and forests. He told her about human inventions, both small and grand, and the struggles that had shaped their culture. Leora, in turn, shared the Sci-Fi history, the rise of their civilization, their principles, and the careful care they took to protect their planet's delicate balance. "You humans live with so much unpredictability," Leora said one evening, watching Elias describe the chaos of Earth's weather. "Yet you survive and even thrive." Elias chuckled. "We adapt. Sometimes we fail, sometimes we succeed. The important thing is to keep moving forward, learning from each step." Leora nodded, clearly intrigued. "Perhaps there is value in that. We focus so much on perfection and order that we forget how growth can come from trial and error." Their conversations grew longer and deeper, stretching into the night as the twin moons cast gentle silver and rose light over the crystal gardens. Sci-Fi who passed by would pause, sensing the unusual bond forming between human and princess. Even the elders, initially skeptical, could not help but notice the growing energy around them, an energy of possibility and hope. One day, they came upon a part of the planet rarely visited by outsiders. A valley stretched before them, filled with strange crystalline formations that hummed softly with an internal light. Leora explained that these crystals had been studied for generations, but no practical use had been found. "Perhaps humans can see possibilities we cannot," she said, her tone half teasing, half serious. Elias knelt among the crystals, examining them. He noticed subtle vibrations and patterns in their hums. With careful observation, he touched one crystal, then another, and soon discovered a resonance between them. Light spread from the points he touched, connecting them like threads across the valley. Leora watched, her eyes wide with amazement. You are doing what we thought impossible." Elias smiled. "I am not doing it alone. You are guiding me." Together they experimented, discovering that the crystals could transmit messages and energy over vast distances. It was a breakthrough, one that could change how the Sci-Fi communicated and managed their resources. Leora felt pride swell in her chest, not just for Elia's ingenuity, but for their partnership. That evening, Elias and Leora stood together under the twin moons. He whispered again, words soft but full of meaning. Together, we can make our worlds better, not by abandoning who we are, but by combining what we each offer. Leora smiled, a slow, radiant smile that reached her eyes. I believe that now, she said. And I believe others will too. In the following weeks, the news of their collaboration spread throughout Zyphera. Young Zypheri, inspired by the human and their princess, began experimenting in ways they had never dared. The elders, observing this change, realized that strict adherence to tradition could be balanced with curiosity and creativity. Elia's presence had sparked not only new discoveries, but a cultural awakening. The human's simple kindness, patience, and insight became a bridge. Zypheri began to see humans not as strangers, but as partners, beings who could offer fresh ideas and perspectives while respecting their traditions. Leora, for her part, continued to learn from Elias, discovering that trust and openness could bring results far beyond rigid rules. One morning, they worked together in the central hall, combining human technology with Zypheri energy systems. The result was a small, self-sustaining energy grid that could power entire districts of the city without harming the environment. The elders watched in amazement, some hesitant at first but soon nodding in approval. This is remarkable, said one elder. Such harmony between mind and energy, it was thought impossible. Elias bowed slightly. Not impossible, only unexplored. Leora looked at him, a mixture of pride and fondness in her expression. It is not only the machines that change, she said. Our hearts and minds are changing too. Their collaboration continued to grow. Elias taught Zypheri methods of observation, experimentation, and human-style problem-solving. Leora guided him in understanding the subtle nuances of Zypheri life, energy, and philosophy. Together, they demonstrated that human ingenuity was not just about machines, but about seeing potential where others saw limitation, about bridging differences rather than enforcing uniformity. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the horizon, Elias and Leora walked along the crystal rivers, their reflections shimmering in the water. The air was filled with the hum of the activated crystals, now a silent network connecting parts of the planet. Young Zypheri played nearby, experimenting and learning, inspired by the human's example. Elias paused, looking at Leora. Do you ever wonder what might happen if more of our worlds met like this? Not in conflict, but in collaboration. Leora's eyes shone. I do. And I think it could change everything, perhaps even beyond Zyphera and Earth. Elias smiled. Humans always hope for possibilities, even when the odds seem small. Perhaps that is our strength. Leora laughed softly. Then perhaps humans are more valuable than I realized. They stood together in quiet reflection, feeling the pulse of the planet, the hum of the crystals, and the soft breeze carrying scents of alien flowers. It was a moment of connection, not just between two individuals, but between two civilizations learning to understand and inspire one another. By the end of Part 2, it was clear that Zyphera was changing. The influence of the human and the princess had sparked curiosity, innovation, and hope. The elders began to embrace new ideas, the young eagerly experimented, and the planet's potential seemed limitless. Elias had proven that humans could inspire not through strength or domination, but through patience, creativity, and a willingness to understand. Leora turned to him, eyes bright with a mix of joy and wonder. You have done more than I imagined, human. You have changed our hearts as well as our minds. Elias nodded. We have done it together, and this is only the beginning. And as the moons bathed them in silver and rose light, Elias felt a quiet certainty. The path ahead would be full of learning and discovery, but with trust, patience, and cooperation, humans and Zypheri could create something extraordinary. Something that neither species could achieve alone. The days on Zyphera grew longer as the twin suns traced golden and pink arcs across the sky. Elias Riker walked beside Princess Leora through the crystal gardens, their shadows stretching across the shimmering pathways. The Valley of Light had become a symbol of change, a place where Zypheri curiosity and human ingenuity met in harmony. The young Zypheri gathered around them, their eyes bright with excitement. Inspired by Elias, they experimented with new ways to connect crystals, study plants, and generate energy without harming the environment. Each day, the planet seemed to hum more vibrantly, as if it recognized the growing cooperation between its people and the human visitors. "Do you see them?" Leora asked, smiling. "They are learning not just from you but from each other. That is the true change." Elias nodded. Humans have always believed that sharing knowledge is the key to progress, and Zypheri have wisdom that humans can only hope to understand. Together, anything is possible. The elders watched from the edges of the gardens, still cautious but increasingly impressed. Some of them approached Elias, asking questions about human ways of learning, teaching, and problem-solving. He answered patiently, showing that human ingenuity was not about rushing or forcing solutions, but about observing, experimenting, and adapting. One elder, whose silver-tinged skin reflected the twin suns, spoke softly. "Your presence has awakened something in our people. Curiosity we thought dormant now thrives. It is unexpected." Elias bowed slightly. "It is not about awakening curiosity. It is about showing what happens when knowledge is shared, when ideas flow freely." The elder nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes. "Perhaps this is how our civilization can grow beyond the limitations we have imposed upon ourselves." Elias smiled. "Exactly. Growth does not require abandoning tradition. It only requires courage to try new paths while respecting what has come before." Leora led Elias to the central hall, where they had begun blending human technology with Zypheri energy systems. The project had grown beyond anything they had imagined, a planetary-scale energy grid that harmonized with Zyphera's environment, providing power for every settlement without depleting resources. It was not only a technical achievement, but a symbol of cooperation and trust. "People from across Zyphera have come to witness the demonstration," Leora said, her voice filled with pride. "They are eager to see what humans and Zypheri can achieve together." As the demonstration began, Elias and Leora activated the system. The crystals pulsed in unison, channels of energy flowing through the networks they had designed. Lights shimmered across the city, reflecting in the eyes of the Zypheri gathered there. The energy system worked flawlessly, showing that collaboration could produce results greater than any one species could achieve alone. Gasps of amazement filled the hall. Young Zypheri clapped and cheered, while the elders nodded in approval. Even the most skeptical among them could not deny the elegance and effectiveness of the design. "This is beautiful," one elder said, "not only in function but in concept. It shows that trust and cooperation can create wonders." Elias turned to Leora, his heart swelling with quiet satisfaction. "It is not just the machines that shine," he said. "It is the minds and hearts behind them." Leora's eyes glimmered with warmth. "And it is humans like you who remind us that our hearts and minds can reach beyond what we thought possible." The success of the project rippled across Zyphera. Towns and cities that had once struggled with energy shortages now thrived. The youth, inspired by the human example, began exploring new ideas in agriculture, communication, and environmental harmony. They experimented, learned from mistakes, and celebrated successes, discovering that curiosity and creativity could exist alongside discipline and tradition. One afternoon, Elias and Leora visited the Valley of the Crystals. Children ran among the formations, testing small experiments with light and energy. Their laughter echoed like music, filling the air with a joyful resonance. Leora knelt beside Elias, observing a young Sci-Fi attempting to create a small bridge of light between two crystals. "They are fearless," she said softly. "They try what their elders would never have attempted." Elias nodded. "That is the gift of inspiration. Once curiosity is awakened, it cannot be contained. And humans, we are good at showing possibilities without demanding them." Leora smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I see it in their eyes, and I see it in yours. Perhaps humans and Sci-Fi are not so different after all. We both seek understanding, even if our paths are different." Elias looked at her, then at the horizon where the twin suns were beginning to set. "Differences are not weaknesses. They are strengths when combined. That is what I hope to show, and I think we have begun to succeed." As evening fell, the two walked to a quiet hill overlooking the city. The lights of the new energy system sparkled like stars, reflecting in the rivers and crystal gardens below. Leora turned to Elias, her gaze steady and thoughtful. "You have done more than I imagined, human. You have not only helped us achieve technical marvels, but you have changed how we think, how we see ourselves and each other." Elias shook his head slightly. "I have not done this alone. We have done it together. You and your people have been willing to listen, to try, to adapt." "That is what made this possible," Leora laughed softly. "Perhaps humans do have wisdom after all." Elias smiled. "We are not wise all the time, but we try, and sometimes trying is enough to make a difference." They stood in silence, watching the city glow beneath the twin moons. The energy system hummed quietly, a living testament to their cooperation. The light reflected in their eyes, not just as illumination, but as a promise of possibility. In the following weeks, Elias worked closely with Leora and her people, helping them develop methods to sustain the new systems and improve communication across Sci-Fi. He introduced tools for observation and documentation, allowing the Sci-Fi to study and record patterns in nature, energy, and society. In return, Leora taught him advanced techniques for harmonizing technology with the planet's natural rhythms. The collaboration deepened trust and respect. Sci-Fi, who had once been skeptical, now sought human guidance, not as a superior authority, but as a partner. They began to realize that humans could inspire new ways of thinking without threatening their culture or traditions. One morning, Leora invited Elias to a high plateau overlooking the northern forests. She pointed to a shimmering lake below, fed by streams of liquid light. "Humans often take nature for granted," she said. "Yet you also see beauty in small things. You notice patterns, connections, even in chaos. That is something our people can learn from." Elias knelt beside her, touching the glowing water. "Humans can learn from you too," he said. "You value balance, harmony, and patience. Those are lessons we often forget in our rush to act." Leora nodded. "Then perhaps together we can show both our peoples how to combine these strengths." And so they did. Elias and Leora organized gatherings where humans and Sci-Fi worked side by side, sharing knowledge, exploring ideas, and celebrating discoveries. They held festivals of light and energy, blending human art with Sci-Fi natural displays. Music and stories flowed between cultures, creating a tapestry of understanding that spread across the planet. One evening, after a day of experiments and demonstrations, Elias and Leora walked through the gardens under a sky painted by the twin moons. He whispered to her, a phrase that had become a quiet ritual between them. "Everything is possible when we trust each other." Leora smiled, the same radiant smile that had first acknowledged their shared potential months ago. "And everything has changed because of that trust," she said softly. The young Sci-Fi gathered nearby, practicing energy bridges between crystals. Their laughter and excitement filled the air, proof that the spark Elias had ignited would continue to grow. The elders watched with approval, realizing that inspiration and guidance could achieve more than strict adherence to rules ever could. Elias felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Humans often feared the unknown, but he had discovered that curiosity, empathy, and patience could bridge worlds. And Zyphera, once cautious and constrained by tradition, now shimmered with possibility. As night fell, the twin moons reflected off the rivers and crystal formations, casting a soft glow over the city. Elias and Leora stood together, hands brushing lightly, sharing a quiet understanding that went beyond words. The world around them was alive with energy, curiosity, and hope. "Do you think our worlds will ever meet again?" Leora asked, her voice thoughtful. Elias nodded. "I hope so. And when they do, I think humans and Zyfari will both be stronger, wiser, and ready to learn from each other. This is only the beginning." Leora's smile deepened, filled with both pride and anticipation. "Then let us continue this journey, human. Together we can guide our peoples to new horizons." Elias felt a quiet joy. The whispers, the small gestures, the patient lessons, they had all led to this moment. The future was not written, but it was full of promise, illuminated by trust, respect, and the courage to explore the unknown. And as the twin moons rose high, casting silver and rose light over the crystal gardens, Elias whispered once more, softly but clearly, "Together, we can change everything." Leora's smile in response said more than words ever could. It was a smile that promised hope, inspiration, and a future where humans and Zyfari would grow together, shaping a galaxy not through conquest or fear, but through understanding and shared vision. Zyphera was no longer just a planet of tradition. It had become a world of possibility, a place where cultures could meet, ideas could flourish, and curiosity could spark lasting change. And at the heart of it all stood a human and a princess, proof that the smallest gestures, whispers, smiles, shared efforts, could illuminate the universe.